Hey kindergartners, so I am going to show you a PowerPoint. It's like a slideshow that I made for us to use at school, and I'm going to film it using my phone, so it's not going to look super perfect when you're watching it. But I'm going to show you the slideshow and talk about each of the artists that we would be talking about if we were at school. And I'm going to show you a real quick little project that you could do with each of the artists. So you could make some art that looked kind of like the way each of these artists or types of art worked. So it'll let you experiment a little and let you learn some more about some famous artists. Now, I also have a couple of read alouds about these artists, and if you are really interested in one of these people and the work that they did, you should look it up and see if you can find another book that you could read. Okay, here we go. Painting through history. Artists' inspirations for kindergarten projects. Long ago, people carved and drew pictures on rocks. You can see here, this is a photograph of some cave paintings. There's some more cave paintings. And there's some from Egypt. All over the world, people used pictures and symbols to share stories and ideas. Today, we can still see some of them. So all these pictures are photographs that people took of cave paintings and rock paintings that they found. In Australia, storytellers used to tell stories and draw in the dirt or on rocks to help listeners remember the characters. Later, native people started making paintings that were like the dirt drawings. They used paint dots to make the pictures. So these are all examples, and I'm going to zoom in and let you look really closely. Those pictures are made of hundreds of little dots all around shapes. And that is the project that I have to suggest for you today. So I'm going to show you some samples and show you how I did them. And if we were in class, I would be getting you to do a piece of art that was inspired by Aboriginal art from Australia. Okay, so here's a little project that you can do that's inspired by the Aboriginal art from Australia. So what I did was I printed a simple shape, and in this case I chose an animal shape. So this is the tail of a whale. And see, it's just a black outline shape. You could take a black pen and trace your hand if you wanted, or trace any shape that you like. And then the first thing I would do would be to color in this tail really carefully with crayon, because I like for it to have a solid color in the shape. And then I'm going to start on the dot work. And I'm going to tell you that this dot picture is going to take a long time to do. So if we were doing this at school, we would do it across a few days, probably. Just work a little bit on it each day. So you're going to start at one place, and you're going to start by making little dots all the way around the edge of the picture. And you see, I'm not trying to draw a little circle. I'm just really making a dot with my marker. I could do bigger or smaller, depending on what you want. So I'm going to go all the way around. And then if I wanted several rows of the purple, I would start with my same color again. So I would go again. I'm doing another dot, and I'm trying to keep them all about the same distance apart from my first row. I'm going to go around again. And then maybe I might switch colors and do another color. And I would literally keep going around and around and around till I filled up the whole outside of the paper. So I'm going to show you a couple of finished ones that I've done. Okay, there's one. Look at all my dots. And I added a little wave swirl up there at the top and the bottom. And you see how I did the dots around the wave? And then they sort of met up with the dots around the whale's tail. And then I think I have another one. Hold on. Oh, yeah. There's one of a gecko or salamander. And I did a couple of shapes just to make it more interesting that I colored the same color as my gecko. But you see, it takes a lot of patience to go around that many times. But you end up with a piece of art that looks really a lot like that dot art. And you can remember how that started long, long ago with the early people just drawing in the sand, drawing their characters from their stories in the sand. Okay, so give that a shot. All over the world, as people started to have extra time, they started to decorate things by painting pictures on them. They painted on pottery, skins, bark, rock, walls, and then on paper and canvas. And here's some examples of ancient artwork. This is on skin down here in the corner. And then this is on, maybe on some cloth down there at the bottom, that Asian looking one. And then of course that top one is a Greek pottery example. Let's talk about some famous artists from history. Leonardo da Vinci lived in Italy from 1452 to 1519. That's almost 600 years ago. He was a scientist, inventor, and an artist. He painted a really famous portrait called Mona Lisa. And that is a painting of Mona Lisa right there. And of course that below is a painting of Da Vinci. He used his artistic talent to make drawings of his inventions and of things he studied. He made drawings of animals and people to show how their bodies worked. He also made drawings of machines that looked like ones we have today. So everyone believes that Leonardo da Vinci was a great genius and he invented all these things in his imagination, and then he would do these drawings of them. So we have all these sketches of these machines that didn't even exist in his time, but he made drawings of them. Here's some more. Pretty amazing. So in school, after we learned a little bit about Leonardo, I would get you to try to make your own little sketch and then build a little machine. So to do that, you're just going to need paper and a ruler and a pencil. And then I want you to try thinking of an idea of a machine and use your ruler to draw your lines and design your machine. And then you can use some toothpicks, and to hold your toothpicks together, you can use mini marshmallows or little pieces of clay or Play-Doh and put your toothpicks together and try to build the machine that you designed. You can also make a design of a machine and build it with sticks if you don't have any toothpicks, or you could even design a machine on a piece of paper and build it with your Lego or your blocks. Good. Albrecht Durer lived in Germany from 1471 to 1528. He was a painter and a printmaker. He made prints by drawing pictures on wood, which were then carved out. Next, ink was rolled onto the cut wood. And finally, the paper and cut wood were pressed together to make a print. Durer also carved pictures in metal to make prints. And I'm going to show you an example of one of Durer's pictures. Whoa, look at that. So imagine that he carved all those details, and then they carved it all out, and then they rubbed ink on it, and everywhere where you see ink is where it was standing up, and then where it's not, the ink wouldn't go. So they would make a print of his picture. So at school, if we were at school, I would get some styrofoam plates and give everybody a little piece of the circle of the middle of a plate. And then I would ask you to take the end of a paintbrush and push down into the styrofoam and make a drawing. You don't want to push so hard that you make a hole in it, but push just hard enough to make the styrofoam rise up a little bit on the other side. And then you can take ink, or in our case, paint, and paint across the styrofoam, then press some paper on it. And I'm going to show you some examples of how it comes out. So everywhere you can see the white is where I had carved out with the end of a paintbrush. Here's another print of that same one. And it doesn't always come out perfect, but you're just getting the idea of what printmaking is all about. And I've got another one here. Here's one. There you are. So that's this circle of the plate, and then all those places are places where I pushed into the styrofoam to make a little raised place. And we put the paint on the side, not the side that was bumpy, but the side where it was pushed through, on the same side where we pushed, is how we did it. So our actual designs are the part where the ink does not go. You could also flip your plate over and try putting paint on the back side and hoping that the place where you had pushed would come out darker. I think that this side works better. So putting paint on the side where you actually pushed into the styrofoam. And you can use a styrofoam plate or a block of styrofoam that was in a packing box, or maybe the tray that some meat came on from the grocery. If you wash that off, and then you just push your design into it with the end of something. If you use a pencil, it'll be too sharp. So that's what I like, using the end of a paintbrush or something that's a little bit dull. And that's what I'm going to push into the styrofoam with. Okay, so that's your Durer project. Claude Monet. Claude Monet lived in France from 1840 to 1926. Monet was a painter and is famous because he didn't try to paint things exactly the way they looked. Early in history, painters usually tried to make their paintings look like photos. Remember, there were no cameras until the 1800s. Monet wanted to make his paintings different. He liked painting outside, and he used lots of brush strokes and lots of color. Sometimes his paintings even look a little blurry. So the cool thing about his paintings is, when you look at them from far away, you can see exactly what they are. But if you look at them very close, it just looks like a mush of lots of different paint, because he used his brush and he would put paint, stroke, 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 stroke of color over and over again on his canvas. But then when you step back from it, it's just lovely. And he painted these places. They were gardens at his house. He painted these gardens and this pond a lot. He did lots of paintings of the same places. There's a famous one, the water lilies. So, for a little project to make a Monet-inspired painting, I've got an example that you could use. Now, you could, of course, use paint to do a Monet, but I like doing one where we did a combination of different materials. So here's an example that I have from school. And so for the water, to show the different strokes of paint, I tore a bunch of colors of blue and green to make the water. And then we used cupcake holders cut out to be the lilies floating on the pond. And then in the background, they've got the little bridge. That's just drawn with a crayon. But you see how it's crayon with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of strokes. So I didn't try to draw exactly what the trees and the water and the grass would look like. We tried to imitate Monet by using splotches of color. So torn color to do sort of a collage water, and then little marks with the crayons to make the background. You could also take out your paints, and instead of doing the straight strokes with your paintbrush, take your paintbrush and just go then your new color like that, and do lots of different strokes of your paint. And then when you're doing your water, it would be lots of strokes of your paint. It would show that the water was moving a little, and it would show that the water actually has lots of colors in it, just like his paintings. Good. So have fun doing a Monet piece. Henri Matisse lived in France from 1869 to 1954. And you see something different about this slide with Matisse. We actually have a photograph of him because he lived in a time when there could be photographs of him. When Matisse was younger, he painted with lots of bright and bold colors. He painted people, objects, and outside scenes. When he was older, Matisse got sick and he could not paint the way he had before. Instead, he started using scissors to cut out paper and painted shapes to make his art. So he would use pieces of paper that he had just painted a solid color and then cut them out. Or sometimes he would cut out colored paper, and he would make these beautiful, bright pieces of art with cutouts by cutting and gluing. So at school, we would do a project like that. So I'm going to show you an example. Back up a little bit. So there's one that I did, and you see I took a big, bright green piece of paper, and then I used lots of black because he used bold colors, and black makes those bold colors really stand out. So I just cut out some shapes and arranged them on my piece of paper, and I got them the way I wanted them, and then I just glued them down. And then you have a piece of art that is inspired by Matisse. Good job. Andy Warhol was an American artist that lived from 1928 to 1987. He made art that is sometimes called pop art, using bright cartoon colors and pictures of famous people and things from everyday life. Here's some examples of some of his work, and you can see that this piece over here is made with a whole bunch of soup labels. So he made copies of the labels from Campbell's soup and did it over and over and over and over again on the canvas. And then up there in the upper right, he took a photograph of a famous actress named Marilyn Monroe, and he used the same photograph 6 different times, and he just colored them in differently to kind of make a brightly colored piece of art. And then that bottom one is done with Coca-Cola bottles. So he took things that you could just find in everyday life and turned them into pieces of art. So at school, I made a copy of something that you're used to. A copy of the front of crayon boxes. And I've given your parents a link to this document where I made this. You can print it off if you want to do this one. And all you do is take your crayons or colored pencils or markers and start coloring them in with bright colors, and you'll end up with a piece of art that would remind everybody of Andy Warhol's work. Georgia O'Keeffe was an artist that lived most of her life in the southwest part of the United States. She was born in 1887 and died in 1986. That means she lived about 100 years. Georgia O'Keeffe loved to walk around outside and make sketches, even when she was a little girl. When she grew up, she painted some buildings in New York City, but her most famous paintings were flowers and landscapes in the desert. So if you would like to make a piece of art that reminds you of Georgia O'Keeffe's work, then you would want to use some bright colors and make a picture where the flowers were really prominent. That means they were the main thing in the picture. She's most famous for her flower pictures. And you could cut out shapes to make those flowers. And you could use your paint. Here's an example of one that I made earlier this year, which used paint and cutouts from a magazine. And it has the bright colors of the flowers and then the painted bright greens of the leaves behind. So you could do something like that to do a piece of art that was inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe. Keith Haring. Keith Haring was an American artist that lived from 1958 until 1990. He made paintings that were like graffiti art. They were simple pictures with lots of black outlines and bright colors. And here are some examples of his work. Now these are really fun to do yourself because you can see he did not try to make his paintings look like real people. They're almost like stick figures, kind of like cartoon figures, but they're really fun and really bright and cheerful. So this is a great project to use your markers. I know you'll love that. And when I did these in school with everybody, we would start out, when we're going to use markers, what would I tell you to do first with your pencil? Yes, I would tell you to sketch it and get it the way you like it first. So I'll show you an example right here. So here's an example that I was going to do and turn into a Keith Haring inspired artwork. So I've done my outline with pencil, but I could erase when I wanted to. And I decided to make mine about basketball. So I'm going to put some lines. You see from on his paintings how he used some lines to show motion. So I'm doing that too on mine, doing some lines to show motion. That's a basketball right there. And then I'm going to take black marker and I'm going to outline my person in black marker. And I'm going to stop right there because it's hard for me to hold the camera and draw. But I'm going to outline my whole paper, all of my motion marks, and my drawing. I didn't try to be fancy, right? It's just simple. And I'm going to outline the whole thing with black, and then I'm going to go back and take a bold color and color in really carefully. Not scribble scrabble, but color it in nice and solid, and it's going to look very cool. And that would be a piece of art inspired by Keith Haring. Okay, go try one. And here's a finished product of a Keith Haring inspired picture. So you can try one at home. So I hope that you have tried a couple of these projects. Maybe you just watched the video one time, and then this week you'll try some of these projects. And you can look back at the video anytime to see each of the things that goes with each type of art. So go and make some cool stuff that you can hang up or send to people in your family, or you can use them for a present for somebody. Okay? All right. See you soon.